This is Comic Geek Speak episode 1655, a conversation with Karl Kesel.
Laser beams, opinions like the seasons on everything you read in comics, movies, games, toys, artists, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek, uniting the world's mightiest heroes. This is...
I am Brian Chrisman.
And I'm Adam Murdo.
Comic Geek Speak.
And welcome to the show. Yes, we're actually doing an interview on Comic Geek Speak. Haven't done an interview in quite some time, but with Mr. Karl Kesel, who's worked on comics for well over 30 years, writer, inker. I'm sure you've read something of his over the years. You know, we're going to go through his career in this episode, but he recently had a Kickstarter campaign for his Section Zero comic, and we were supposed to have Mr. Kesel on a few weeks ago. If you recall, our impromptu comic talk we had a little while ago. Well, we were waiting for Mr. Karl Kesel. We had a little conflict there, so we got him back on. But actually now, his campaign has been funded.
Yep, just proving he didn't need the help of a bunch of pikers like Comic Geek Speak to make his will be done. But still, we congratulate him, and we're happy that we're still going to have him on in a few minutes to talk about it.
Yes, but first, a word from our sponsor. This episode of Comic Geek Speak is brought to you by SuperheroStuff.com. We go to for all of your superhero stuff. Excellent. Yes. If you have any, whether it's you or a friend or relative who's looking for geek-related items, merchandise, this is the place to go. Whether it's T-shirts, hats, hoodies, PJs and undies, belts, accessories, things for home office, for kids. They've got it. Just all kinds of great. And again, they're always getting so much new stuff in. Right now, as we record this, it's the official release day of the Wonder Woman movie. So they've got a whole shop for Wonder Woman toys, you know, T-shirts, glasses, all kinds of things. They still have a lot of things for Guardians of the Galaxy movie, Volume 2 that came out not too long ago. They've got pop figures. They've got buttons. So they have the awesome mixed lapel pin from Guardians of the Galaxy. They have a Wonder Woman movie tiara. Very nice. Some pint glasses, some T-shirts, mugs. Always adding new things. Always having promotions. So you're going to want to keep checking their site regularly. Sign up for their notifications via email and Twitter. All kinds of promotions going on. They do hit some conventions every now and then, so also check out your convention to go find them in person. They're local to us here. Great people. We've been there for quite some time. So check them out, superherostuff.com.
And if you get there quickly enough, now we're recording this on June 2nd, but there is a limited time offer right now where if you buy $25 or more worth of merchandise, you get a free Wonder Woman invisible jet.
How about that?
It's microverse size, though. It's not. You can't write in it or anything. I'm pretty sure it's just like a little plastic toy. But even so, it's free.
Yes. All right. A couple of quick announcements. Many of you know that Brian and I help out with the London Super Comic Convention, and it's happening this August 25th, 26th, and 27th at the Business Design Center in London, England. And they just announced some big guests coming to the con, including Bart Sears, Terry Dodson, and some guy named Brian Michael Bendis, making his first UK con appearance. We're very happy he's coming to the convention and looking forward to that tremendously, because this is a new venue we're having it at. It used to be at the Excel Center. Now it's at this Business District Design Center. So looking forward to that. If you're looking for tickets, you can go to LondonSuperComicConvention.com and buy your tickets now. It's also the first time doing a 3-day show. So looking forward to that very much. Also want to mention, coming up on Saturday and Sunday, June 17th and 18th, at Wild Pig Comics at 14 South Michigan Avenue in Kenilworth, New Jersey. our co-host shop, Wild Pig Comics, run by Chris Eberly, is having a special sale. Details are still coming. I got a text from Chris about an hour and a half ago, as a matter of fact. So this is all coming into fruition. But listen to this sale. He says it's the largest back issue sale in Wild Pig Comics history.
That is saying something.
Yes. He just has over 10,000 fresh back issues are being prepared, as well as hundreds of like-new used trades. All comics and trades will be 25% off. They also have a large assortment of toys and pop figures at $5 a piece. And I just got this text. This text says he just picked... Now, the email was from a few days ago. This text says he just picked up another 5,000 books, so he'll be putting out 15,000 fresh back issues from the Silver Age through 2016 that weekend.
Fresh back issues, no less.
Fresh. So that's it'll be wall-to-wall comics and trades that weekend. It's going to be open Saturday, June 17th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Sunday, June 18th from noon to 8 p.m. So if you're in the area, I think it'd be well worth your while to visit it. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to be at Heroes Con that weekend, so I'm going, maybe I might see if he has any special books and say, hey, can somebody get them up for me? But I'll be with you there in spirit, Chris. I guess, Adam, you'll be probably down at Stone Harbor, I imagine, that weekend?
Most likely, yes. So I'm upset enough that I'm not going to be able to come to Heroes Con with you, Brian, and so I apologize to you and everybody who might have been looking forward to seeing me down there. So, but I'm sorry. Other commitments have proved an insuperable obstacle, and I am out. But I hope you have a good time out at Heroes, Brian, and I hope Chris has great success with his sale at that same time.
Yes, comics, wall-to-wall comics. I love it. All right, well, now we're going to join Mr. Karl Kesel for a wonderful conversation. All right, and now joining us for the episode is Mr. Karl Kesel. Welcome to the show, Mr. Kesel.
Well, thank you very much. Good to be here.
Yes. We tried to get you on a little while ago when we had some issues, so I'm very happy we have you on the show now to talk about what now has been funded, your Section Zero Kickstarter.
Yes, it has. I'm as surprised as anyone, believe me. It's a good surprise. But I really expected we would be talking about the Section 02nd Kickstarter right now. Because I've been working on that for the last, 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks of wasted work at this point.
But we're going to get into that and many other things. We have a little time to talk here. But the first thing we ask everybody who is on the show for the very first time is, how did you first start getting into reading comics?
Okay, I know I picked up a few loose comics as a kid, but when I really got into reading comics was 1969, and our family took a summer trip driving across country. I grew up in New York State. We drove all the way to California, across the southern tier, drove all the way back across the northern tier. It took the entire summer break. And my dad had outfitted a Dodge van, and there was a little, he had changed the two middle seats so they faced each other in the back of the van, and built a table where me and my sister could sit and play games and read. And, basically we sat in the car for 8 or 10 hours a day, mostly. And that, for a 10-year-old, is really boring. And, at the time, we'd pull into gas stations, and what gas stations had in 1969? They had comic books.
Yeah.
And I would pick up comics, and we were gone for a whole month, so actually, some new issues of comics would show up, and it was gas stations, so they actually even had some older issues hanging around that had been looked over or picked over or what. So in the course of that month, I probably got 3 issues in a row of a lot of the Marvel comics, and I started to understand the connectivity of the stories and really get into the characters, and that was the summer I just got hooked. That was the summer I got hooked on comics.
Hooked on comics. I like it.
It works for me.
Do you still have any of those books?
Oh, I have many. Well, I have most. I don't want to say most. I sold most of my Marvels to pay for the adoption of my son.
Okay.
So, but I did keep some. I kept all of my Fantastic Fours. So I have the Fantastic Fours I bought at the time, which was issues like 80, 81, 82. And I do have Silver Surfer #1, which I bought off the stands,
Oh,
which
nice.
I have Scotch taped the cover back onto. So, but so I still have a few of those old comics, but most of them I actually did get rid of to pay for adoption costs.
Okay. So then how did you then eventually get into creating comics, both, writing and drawing comics?
Well, I mean, really quickly, I decided I wanted to be a cartoonist. I mean, like any kid, I had a million things I wanted to be. I wanted to be a veterinarian for a very long time, but I'm kind of queasy around blood and hurting animals, so I knew that really was not going to become an option for me. And somewhere in there, the comics just really clicked as something I would want to do and probably could do. And so I pursued that pretty single-mindedly most of my young adult life. I can't think of anything else that I seriously wanted to do. And luckily, when I was graduating high school in '77, the Joe Kubert School had opened up. And I was actually in what would have been their second graduating class. And I went there in the fall of '77. And I quickly decided I did not have what it takes to be a cartoonist. I was surrounded by some damn talented people.
I can imagine.
And I had come from a small town in upstate New York where I really kind of thought I was it, and that was not the case. That was not the case at all. I mean, I still remember so distinctly walking in, and this is like before classes even began, and John Tottleben was there, and John Tottleben had a 11 by 17 piece of paper, and he just took a pencil and made an S curve on it that took up most of the page, and that's all the penciling he did. Then he took his brush and put it in ink, and he drew the most fantastic Frazetta-like sea serpent you'd ever seen. And it was just like flowing from his head. And I was like going, I cannot compete on this level. So I actually, at the end of the year, I actually left the Kubert School, so I never did graduate. And I went to a fine arts school trying to figure out what I was actually going to do with my artistic abilities. But it was when I was there that I just kept gravitating back to comics. I'm in the drugstore, and what's happening in X-Men right now? Because this was like Byrne and Austin and Claremont X-Men era, And I was just, it's like Al Pacino in Godfather. I got pulled back in,
How did you then eventually get into the writing part of the comics?
Well, I moved to New York City and bothered DC and Marvel with samples until I was lucky enough to get into DC's New Talent Showcase program. And from there, I very quickly got a good break to ink Tales of the Legion of Superheroes, first over Terry Shoemaker, then for 6 issues over a young guy named Dan Jurgens, who you may have heard of.
Rings a bell.
Yeah. So, but I mean, quite honestly, that led to different things. Like I obviously inked John Byrne on Superman for a while, and I always had ideas for stories. And John actually said that if I was a Marvel guy, my nickname would be Karl the Kibitzer Kesel, because I just was like, hey, John, how about this idea, And I mean, it's not like I supplied a lot of ideas John used. I think the only idea I threw John's way that he actually used was I said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if Terrible Turpin we revealed was actually Brooklyn from the Boy Commandos all grown up? And John liked that one, and he used it. But
Nice.
But I would do the same thing on Suicide Squad. I would write long letters to John Ostrander with ideas for the Suicide Squad, and he and his wife Kim called them Kesel epistles. So anyways, I was always interested in that sort of thing, and somewhere in there, I got a chance to co-write a Hawk and Dove miniseries with my girlfriend at the time, then my wife Barbara Kesel, and that just, little by little, the door opened for me as a writer. And my first solo writing chance, I wrote a Secret Origin of the Newsboy Legion for Secret Origin book that was edited by some guy named Mark Waid. Mm-hmm. So Mark gave me my first big break as a writer.
Very cool.
But then, out of the blue, I got a call from Mike Carlin saying Jerry Ordway had kind of run his fill on Superman, and would I like to step in? And I mean, that was the call that changed my career.
Yeah. Now, Adam, I'm going to keep going on here, so if you want to have any questions, you better jump in, Adam, okay?
I will not hesitate. Maybe I will. Where does Hawk and Dove fall into this early part of your career as a writer?
I mean, that came, obviously before the Superman gig, and before even the Secret Origin of the Newsboy Legion. That came about the time I was inking the history of the DC Universe over George Perez, because I was inking the double-page spread from Crisis, and he had a little, sidebar of all of the fallen heroes who had died during Crisis, and one was Dove. And I mean, I was even inking Dove, and I was going, Dove, light blue costume, name like Dove, it really should have been a girl. It really should have been a female. And I know I talked that over with Barbara, and somewhere in there it actually became a real pitch. I can't say exactly how that happened, but that was I would say that wasn't actually the first thing I pitched. Back in my Tales of the Legion of Superheroes days, Terry Shoemaker, who I still think is an amazing artist, he was only on the book for 6 issues, and he wanted to do something else. And Terry loved cars. He really loved cars. And so I came up with an idea for a guy who would drive a car. He would be like this kid, and he would be street racing, and he has his car, and then a UFO crashes, and he puts parts from the UFO in his car. And then his car can do all these crazy things. I thought Terry would like to draw that. And obviously nothing came of it. And the only reason I bring it up is I ran across that pitch. I gave it to Karen Berger. And she was very gracious, and she said, thanks, but not right now.
Nice. Yeah, we just touching on your career. I mean, you've been in comics for well over 30 years. I mean, you mentioned already History of the DC Universe you worked on, Suicide Squad, Hawk and Dove, Legends, Who's Who, inking John Byrne on Superman. Of course, probably one of you met your big breaks, Reign of Superman, with Superboy leading into that. So many things. Now, we just talked about Hawk and Dove. I was actually getting back into comics around that time, maybe like a year or two before, and I was really enjoying the, I guess it was called Armageddon 2001. And, it's been many, many years, but I know there was some change of who the main villain was supposed to be. It was supposed to be against Captain Atom, and it became Hawk. Right. Now, since you were writing Hawk and Dove, you sort of had to finish a series. How did that what was your perspective of how that went down? Were you involved with that decision-making process at all?
Oh no, not at all. I mean, it was, DC owns those characters. They can do whatever they want. So it was really just told to us that, the Hawk and Dove book, the regular monthly book was selling okay, but it was certainly not selling gangbusters. There had been a few points where we had been told we were kind of close to the chopping block. And as I understand it, basically once news of Captain Atom as Monarch leaked out, they looked for an alternative, and since Hawk and Dove wasn't selling that well anyways, they thought we were a sacrificial lamb that they could afford, basically. And we were just given we were told the book's going to end, and we just had to kind of wrap things up, So we're hired guns. We were hired guns.
Okay, that's cool. Now, of course, you mentioned the big break with Mike Carlin, and can you talk about how that whole thing happened?
Well, what do you mean that whole thing?
Well, how you got involved in the whole Superman storyline.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously they'd already decided to kill Superman when they called me up. I mean, Jerry was involved with killing him, and then Jerry felt I was pretty much the capper to his run on Superman. And Carlin asked if I could come on board to help out bring him back. And so I said, sure, that would be great. I mean, I know at the time no one expected the death of Superman to be what it was. I mean, I had accepted this assignment with the understanding that Superman was selling well enough that I would maybe see $100 a month in royalties. So, it was selling, but it wasn't selling, And I enjoyed Carlin. Carlin and I have always gotten along really well. I enjoyed Dan and Dan's work. It seemed like a good bunch of people to be in with. And so I said, yeah. And they brought me in. My first summit was the summit where we decided how to bring back Superman. And it was a great time. I know Dan has said a few times from the minute I walked in the room, it seemed like I'd always been there, which is a great compliment,
Now, is this where you first also met Tom Grummett?
Yes, that was the first time I met him face to face, and he was already drawing Adventures of Superman, so I was inheriting him, or he was inheriting me, however you want to look at it. But I'll tell you, an interesting story is that twice before I had I had kind of my path almost crossed with Tom's. Once again, I was living in New York City. I went into the DC offices, and that young editor, Mark Wade, pulled me over, and he goes, Carl, I want to show you someone. I think you'd be so good on inking him. And he showed me these pages of The Secret Origin of Animal Man, drawn by Tom Grummett. And I believe that was first thing Tom ever did for DC. And it was beautiful stuff. And I did not, for whatever reason, end up inking it. Probably I was too busy, or maybe even Mark had already found a different inker, but he just thought we would be a good pair. And so he showed me the stuff. And obviously it left an impression, because I remember to this day what that page looked like. And then at about the same time, I went down to the Marvel offices because my contract was lapsing, so I was looking, my exclusive at DC was lapsing, so I was looking for what options I might have at Marvel. And I went up there, and a young editor up there who was doing a sci-fi anthology book called Open Space, his name was Kurt Busick. He pulled me aside, and he goes, Carl, I got this guy drawing a story for me, and I think you'd be perfect to ink him. Obviously, Kurt and Mark both saw something simpatico in our approaches. And clearly they were right. We've done, I think, some really strong, solid comics together. I think Tom and, I have to say I've enjoyed inking a lot of different people. But Tom and I would say Mike Waringo are the two people I've worked with extensively that I really felt in sync with, And I think that both of them, their styles are very different. But what I see that's similar is there's a seriousness to their work, but there's also a smile in their work. And I personally like that.
Yes. And I was a big fan of Superboy when it was coming out. So how did you get on that book? Did you pitch for that book? Did you get assigned for that book?
Well, the deal was when we were figuring out, I had been told before the summit, come to the summit with some ideas on how to bring Superman back. Mm-hmm. And so I was trying to think of how would I do it. And I thought maybe there could be 4 different Supermen, one in each book. And I'm not trying to claim credit for that, because when I got to the summit, that seemed to have been decided before I even showed up. You know what I mean? I mean, on the bus ride to the summit, Carlin made some comment that made me think, oh, we're going to have different Supermen in all the books. That's already been decided. But I'm just saying, I guess I was already kind of in sync, because that was a thought that appealed to me. And I will admit, when I came up with the idea, and I did write a few paragraphs about it, I did think, well, what are the 4 different Supermen? My idea would be maybe they could reflect the title of the book somehow. So Man of Steel, maybe he's a robot. There's a long history of Superman robots. Maybe that would be what it is. Action Comics, I thought, well, you could do a Siegel and Schuster-esque Superman, one who leaps 1/8 of a mile and bursting shells can still hurt him, and that sort of thing. And I thought Superman would actually be the Superman. It must be Superman in the Superman book. And then I was stuck, though. The one I was stuck on was The Adventures of Superman, the book I'd be writing. I was going like, what does that say to me? It doesn't, and I was like literally hitting my head against a wall, because I was very excited about the possibilities of this approach, but I couldn't figure out what fit naturally into a book called Adventures of Superman until I remembered the old tagline, The Adventures of Superman When He Was a Boy. Uh-huh. And I said, Superboy, that's perfect. And so that was in my little paragraph write-up that I brought with me to the summit. And but I mean, I don't even think people read that, because as soon as we sat down, Carlin just said, "What kind of Superman can we have?" And he had a big whiteboard, and he just started writing down what everyone was saying: alien, and female Superman, and it was Dennis Janke who first said Superboy, and he was the inker on Man of Steel over John Bogdanoff. And it got written down there. And I was going, oh no, I wanted Superboy. I'd already gotten really attached to this idea, But so then when we started divvying things up and Superboy came up, there'd already been some talk about him being a clone, possibly a clone of Superman or a supposed clone of Superman. And I, even at that point, had done a number of stories with Project Cadmus. I'd done them as backups in the Adventures of Superman book a few times. I'd done and everyone knew I loved that stuff. And so I said, well, if we're going to make him attached to Cadmus, maybe I could do him, And I was kind of poaching, Dennis had put that name on the board. He kind of had prior claim to it, The Man of Steel book really, if they had put their foot down, they could have had Superboy. And I would have understood that. But I made one little effort to get him. And Weezie Simonson, to her credit, just said, oh, yeah, okay, you can have Superboy. I mean, that was like another moment that changed my life right there. So Tom and I had Superboy, and and I don't think Weezie and Bog did very badly with Steel either. I think clearly they did fine. Mm. So, and it was while we were there, Tom came up with the design for Superboy, which basically is the way you saw him. The only thing Mike Carlin had asked was Tom gave Superboy kind of spiky hair, more like what Robin had at the time, and Mike Carlin said, "Give him the spit curl," and then we were set.
Wise man, that great Carlini.
The great Carlini he's known as the great Carlini for a reason.
And in looking through some of my research here, if I'm not mistaken, at that time, or for a very brief time, Tom Grummett was penciling both Superboy and Robin. Does that sound about right?
Probably about right. There's certainly a time, yeah. He's a fast guy. He can work very quickly, thank God,
That's amazing. Now, you were not inking over him on the first run of Superboy because you were writing.
And I was still writing Adventures of Superman, and I will admit, writing or inking, I'm not the fastest worker. I work for comics quite slowly. So if I'm inking a book, it takes me at least 3 weeks and probably more to ink a book. I'm really a page-a-day guy.
Okay.
And writing, it takes me about 5 days to write a script. It almost always takes me 5 days to write a script. So I can't really do, too much, But the second time around, Tom and I was really amped about doing a second run on Superboy, and at least for most of those issues, I inked those. So I was really happy with that.
And now recently, with DC, they had a mini crossover called The Button, where they reflected on the DC Rebirth and the whole Watchmen thing. And in one of the issues, they brought up Hyper Time. One of the few stories that came out of Hyper Time, you were the writer on. You wrote Hypertension.
Yeah, a few who were brave enough to play with that particular toy.
Well, I had a lot of fun, I have to say. And, that came about really by, so much in life is timing, right? Mm-hmm. But that story came about because of timing, too. I mean, I had been working on, Tom and I were back on Superboy. I was writing and inking it at the time. We were having a great time. We were having such a good time on that book. And I was trying to think of what we were going to do next, and I contacted the editor, Mike McAvenny, and I said, I got this idea that maybe we could send Superboy to a lot of these different Elseworlds that DC's been doing. I think it would be fun if he bounced around from different Elseworlds to different Elseworlds. And Mike was like quiet on the phone for a minute. He goes, I think you should talk to Mark Waid. Because that was right when Mark Waid and Grant Morrison were proposing Hyper Time. And it just so happened I was like right there at the same time. And they were gracious enough basically to let me hitch my wagon to that star. And, Grant Morrison is a man of ideas that just shoot through the roof. There's no stopping him. And, he and Mark gave me a great platform to play with, some great toys to play with. So yeah, that's still, I think, a really good story that we did. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was trying to find it in my collection to reread it, but I couldn't. I couldn't find my comics for that.
I keep telling you, Brian, you can borrow my copies if it comes down to it.
Well, if I have to, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! And like I said, you've now around that time. That was, I guess, was that a 98, 99, I think.
Probably.
Mm-hmm. And that sort of leads into right around the 2000s when. Well,
actually, before we get onto that fateful year of 2000,
okay.
Brian, I did want to interject one thing here, just for the Marvel zombies in the listening audience, just to establish that Mr. Kesel does, in fact, have a pretty impressive resume on both sides of the Marvel-DC aisle. I wanted to point out that you, Mr. Kesel, are the author of one of my favorite ever runs of Daredevil, 12 issues from the mid-'90s, paired with artist Carrie Nord.
Yeah, Carrie, great guy, great artist. Boy, yeah, well, thank you very much. I'm glad you like those. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Whenever anybody brings up favorite runs of theirs on that character, and they talk about the Mark, that upstart young editor Mark Waid again, who gave you one of your breaks, and Chris Samney, the work they've done on the character recently. I always say yes, they're doing some great stuff with Daredevil, but they're kind of tapping into the same tonal vein that Karl Kesel and Carrie Nord got into in the mid-'90s.
Yeah, and I've had that comparison brought up to me before, and I would say this is my reaction is always that. Mark and Chris and all the other artists he worked with on that. Mark did the Daredevil I wish I could have done. I mean, it just comes down to the fact that Mark is a better writer. And Mark has a laser focus on these things. And I think we both have very similar outlooks and like the same sort of things. And I was so thrilled with Mark's run because really it was everything I would have liked to have done with the character. Yeah, it's a brilliant run. Absolutely brilliant.
So, again, that fateful year around 2000, I remember at the time hearing of Guerrilla Comics. I was a big fan of Mark Waid, so I know that I got the issues of Empire that they came out.
Right.
But Adam, actually, amongst the two of us, was the one who actually bought and owns a copy of Section 0, number 1.
That's why I like Adam better. Yeah.
Oh!
Neener, Brian.
So, talk a little bit about how the original Section 0 came to be.
Well, I mean, Section 0 specifically, or Guerrilla Comics, or...
Oh, whatever... Guerrilla Comics...
I will tell you this. Let's start with Section 0. I mean, it actually starts separately from Guerrilla Comics.
Okay.
Because, although not separately, oddly enough, from Kurt Busiek. Kurt Busiek is another man of many ideas, and most of them brilliant, I would have to say. And there was a time before Guerrilla Comics that Kurt had an idea for an anthology book, and I don't want to go into all the details, but it would have been more of a newsstand magazine than a comic. And but he wanted 4 different features in this magazine, 4 different comics features. And Kurt and I, being pals, he was talking to me, and he knew that I certainly had always wanted to do something Challengers of the Unknown-like, FF-like. Those are, really my 2 favorite comics from DC and Marvel. I just love those concepts, and clearly they're closely related. And so Tom Grummett and I put together an idea for a team called Section 0, which would be, I guess nowadays the elevator pitch is Jack Kirby does the X-Files. Mm-hmm. And Kurt is the one who came up with the name. Kurt, really, I mean, I was banging my head against the wall trying to think of a good name for this team. And Kurt came up with the name Section 0, in which he said, sounds really Kirby-like, doesn't it? And it does, because Jack has actually done a Section 0. It's part of Apocalypse.
Right. You posted something about that on your Facebook feed.
Yeah. There's at least 1, maybe 2 issues of Mr. Miracle that at least mention it in passing, yeah. So, but it was Kurt came up with the name, but it really didn't mean anything. And so I still remember walking up and down the sidewalk in front of my house going, Section 0, because I love the name. And what's a section of? What? The UN Charter. It's, and once I thought of it as this secret section of the UN Charter, everything else just kind of fell apart, fell in place. And, Tom and I put together the idea and the look at the team very quickly. And then that anthology book didn't happen. And so it just kind of sat on the back shelf for a while until Guerrilla Comics came along. And once again, Kurt was saying, Kurt was telling me one day, yeah, Mark and I have got this idea for a little imprint. And, he invited Tom and I to join the ride, which we were more than happy to do. And we just dusted off Section 0, and that's what we published. 3 issues of Section 0 in 2000.
And then it went away, unfortunately.
Yeah, it went away, unfortunately. My own life kind of fell apart a little bit, and I could no longer literally afford to work on a creator-owned book since we were not being paid any money.
Right. And meanwhile, Guerrilla Comics itself kind of fell apart at the same time, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. I would say, Section 0 was I would still put the blame for Section Zero going away on my shoulders. I mean, clearly, Kurt and Stuart continued with their ideas for a while. But yeah, Guerrilla fell apart generally. But Section Zero really did specifically fall apart because of my problems.
Now, before I'm going to put aside, I just noticed in the background, because I can see your video, is that a spinner rack you have in the back?
Oh, of course that's a spinner rack. Of course it is.
Yeah, we have one in this. Well, we don't have a spinner rack. We actually have a rack of comics. What is on your spinner rack there? I can't really see it too clearly.
Oh, well, it has not been updated in a very long time, but I've got, let me see, the Essential Ant-Man is there, the Essential Human Torch, some Section Zero, some of the, well, that's fairly recent, the Battlestar Galactica I wrote, some Rose and Thorn that Gail Simone wrote eons ago. Like I said, these are old. Some of these are very old. I've got some PvP comics, Player versus Player by Scott Kurtz. You know, back when there was actually a comic that he published. What else? Walking Dead. You know, like I said, I for a while tried to keep it up and, you know, would rotate the comics, and that I stopped doing that a long time ago.
Yeah, it just caught my eye. So, oh my God, that's a spinner rack he's got in the back.
Spinner rack, there it is.
Very nice.
Yeah, no. I think every good comic geek should have a spinner rack. They really should. I don't even know if they make them anymore. Probably not.
Yeah, well, you have to go look for one like at a flea market somewhere.
Yeah,
right?
flea markets or eBay nowadays. Yeah, I actually got this from a friend of mine who ran a small comic shop in the town I grew up in, Victor, New York, and he was kind enough to give it to me at one point.
Okay. Well, now you actually mentioned, how did you get from, not by plane, how did you get from New York to Portland where you are now?
Well, that would be because of my first wife, Barbara. She grew up in Los Angeles area and did not like New York City at all. She was working as an editor at DC Comics. She liked working at DC, but she did not like New York at all. And so she really wanted to move back to the West Coast. I am not a fan of Los Angeles. I just have never warmed to that city, that area very much. And so I wasn't really thrilled about the idea of moving to Los Angeles. So she wanted to live on the West, and I kind of wanted to live in the Northwest. We should look at the Northwest. And as it happened, an old Joe Kubert, QB buddy of mine, Ron Randall, lived in Portland, Oregon. And actually, when he lived in Dover, New Jersey, when he was still breaking in, Barbara and I would hang out with him and his wife Linda quite often on weekends, and we were all very close. And so he said, "Well, if you're going to move, you guys should move to Portland, Oregon." And we came out, we visited, we liked it, and in 1989 we moved out to Portland, Oregon. It was a long time ago.
Wow!
And at the time, Dark Horse was around. It was around. Ron Randall was doing Trekker for them, and Boris the Bear was being done, and the American, very early Dark Horse. They were in this teeny tiny storefront on a street in Portland that I think now is a nail salon. I mean, it was a small space for Dark Horse Comics, and that was the first place I saw them. But then they quickly moved down to Milwaukee and expanded. They own the whole town of Milwaukee now. So, but yeah, I moved in '89 to Portland. That's how I ended up here, and it turned out to be a town I really love. It's a town I love. And we have a great cartoonist community here. There are so many cartoonists that live in Portland that there's people you can complain to about, and they understand what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Yeah, those editors. Yeah, So,
any names we'd recognize?
Oh, out here? Sure. Steve Lieber is out here. Ron Randall's out here. Paul Galassi is out here. A little guy named Matt Wagner lives out here. Mm-hmm. Randy Bowen, the sculptor, he lives out here. Who else is out here? There's so many people. Gary Martin lives out here. Randy Emberlin lives out here. Aaron Lepresti. Terry Dodson doesn't live in Portland anymore. He lives down in Florence, which is the town he grew up in on the Oregon coast. Mignola lived here for a while. Art Adams lived here for a while. We have a good crowd here, a very good crowd. Jeff Parker lives here. Chris Somney was here. Anyways, we've had people come and go, but it's a really great cartooning town. It really is.
Yeah. All right. So after Section Zero, that put on the shelf for a while.
Put on the shelf.
And then you were writing Harley Quinn. You were also writing Fantastic Four through the 2000s. Mm-hmm. Did you always have Section Zero in the back of your mind wanting to bring it back, or did you just forget about it?
No. It was always there. I mean, it was designed by design. It was the sort of comic I've always wanted to do, and it was the sort of comic that DC and Marvel was not necessarily interested in doing. So I knew if we were going to do it, we were going to have to bring back Section Zero. And over the years, I've talked to Image Comics about doing it there, and they were interested. But once again, Tom and I are just not in a position where we can work for free, and the amount of money they could offer us up front, even at Image, which they do from time to time. They don't generally, but from time to time they offer some upfront money, and they ran their numbers and they could not offer us enough to do it at Image. I had a similar thing happen at IDW. They really wanted to bring Section Zero back, and the amount of money they offered us was not enough to pay our bills for the amount of work we needed to do. So in 2012, actually, Tom and I thought we'd take a stab at online comics, and we actually reposted all 3 issues of Section Zero online, and in the course of that produced 12 new pages of material. And then it once again was not paying us money. And it was clear Section Zero was not the sort of project Tom and I could do on the side. It was the sort of project we needed to devote ourselves to. And that meant we had to pay our bills. And so we started talking about Kickstarter, a number of years ago, and exploring it and researching it. And, as you know, we did it. We finally jumped in with both feet and ran a Section Zero Kickstarter, which got funded, so we're going to do it.
Yes, we were originally going to have you on to sort of help you with the Kickstarter, but it just ended yesterday, and it was funded, and I was very pleased because I pledged my $25 for the hardcover. Well, I think now it's going to be the hardcover.
Now it's hardcover. Everyone that gets a printed book gets a hardcover.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So this is now more like a victory lap for you now.
It is. Yeah, I will say when I was first going to be on, I was going to promote the Kickstarter. And then that window passed, but at that point, I was convinced we were not going to get funded. I mean, at the halfway point in the campaign, we had not raised 50% of our money, and I thought, if we have not raised 50% at the halfway point, there's no way we're going to raise more in the second half of the campaign than we did at the first, because everyone that was excited about the project pledged that first day. We had a great first day. We were at 20% funded, 30% funded in like 4 days. But then, a week and a half later, we still had not made 50%. So I was convinced it was doomed. And I kept plugging away at it. I kept, because I had the plan that we would launch a rebooted campaign the day after, which would have been today. Mm-hmm. And I ran some numbers and I figured out ways to save a little more money and consolidate. I was going to get rid of almost all of the rewards and just print things in the book as opposed to envelopes and manila envelopes and posters. We were just going to put it all in the book. And that's what I thought we'd be talking about today. I thought I'd come on with you today and we would talk about the new Kickstarter and how everyone should run out and support it right now. And surprise, 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 we were funded yesterday, and funded, I think, handily. We were looking for $62,000. We ended up with just change over $65,000. So I'm thrilled that I actually have my life back again and can devote my life to something that quite honestly, I really enjoyed running the Kickstarter. It was a month of adrenaline is what it is. Mm. But I'm really looking forward to settling into doing what I think I do better, which is comics.
Yeah, and I noticed you brought out a lot. Well, first of all, you had a crew of people, friends throughout the industry, helping you out with, the video you did for that, of course, and making some donations to the Kickstarter and like some of the level prizes.
Yeah.
And you and Tom opened up your vault because you, as I understand it, you actually keep a lot of your original art that you worked on. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't sell a lot, no. And, especially stuff that's close to me. I mean, like the Superboy stuff that I inked over Tom, I've sold very little of that. Very little. So and Tom and I were dividing up whole books. So I would have like all of issue 61, all of issue 65 or something like that. I would have whole books of art, which was wonderful. Art that has the lettering on the pages.
Yes,
too.
I know. Because, like I said, I'm a pretty good art collector of the last, 12 years or so, and, I've met a few people who keep their art, and I like that you have, entire books, because that just, with the lettering, that's amazing. And I was very tempted, because you had a few pages from the hypertension storyline available. And I was really going back and forth. Do I want it? Because I know you kept a lot of your art. It's like, do I want to do that? But I was calm, and I just went with the $25. But wow, yeah. Someday I love to just look through the artwork you have.
Yeah, well, if you're in Portland, please stop by.
Yes.
I can't say it's organized, but I know where it is at least.
You don't know what you're letting yourself in for, Mr. Kesel.
No, that's not a problem. Not a problem. So not so much now that I have children, but before children, I did a lot of art collecting myself. I have this attitude that if I want people to buy my art, if I want people to think my art is worth buying, I have to think art is worth buying. So I should buy art. And so I have over the years. I bought art from people I've always admired. Sure, certainly. Mostly, I will say, I have a lot of Milton Caniff work because I love Caniff's work. I've got 14 dailies of his.
Wow.
So almost 3 whole weeks of his life I've got represented. And I've got some Kirby. I've got a Watchmen page, which is nice. That's nice. And quite honestly, the only reason I have that is because my wife at the time edited the book.
Oh. So you're an original owner, more or less, of that page, then?
Yeah, no, we got it right from Dave. Yeah.
Oh.
So
I'm sorry, I need a moment here. I just love talking original art, and with artists who just respects it and buys others. Oh, fantastic.
So, anyways, I could bore you for hours with talk about that too.
Maybe some other time. But so now, Section 0 is funded. It's going to happen.
Yes.
Tell us what's next for you now. What are you working? Are you working on finishing all the rest of the book and everything with Tom?
Well, we're going to get on that book as fast as I can. Tom, when he got the news that the book was funded, was sitting in a hotel lobby in Niagara Falls where he's going to be at a convention this weekend.
Oh.
So Tom and I are going to talk Monday or Tuesday after he gets back and figure out our schedule and figure out how soon Tom can get on it. Because, the thing is we didn't know this was going to be funded, and so we do have other commitments, So we've got to figure out what our schedule is going to be, when I have to get him script, when he can get me pencils, when I can get the inks to the letterer and the colorist. But if all goes according to plan, we could have this to the printer by October, and it could be back in our hands by December. That's now I will say that's a little ideal. There could be things that screw that up. If the printer is slow, we are looking at using a fulfillment service, and actually one that I talked to said they are already booked for December because December is a big month for fulfilling things. Right. Surprise, surprise, surprise. I'd never thought of that before. But anyway, really, that's the next thing on my plate is to do Section 0 for the next 3-4 months. Yeah. Wonderful. And I'm very excited about that.
Well, now that the Kickstarter campaign is concluded, though, what about those people who missed the boat and did not jump on the bandwagon? Is there any way they can be a part of this now? Is it too late to contribute and get on for a copy of the trade?
I don't know if there's going to be a trade right now. We're going to do the hardcover collected book, collector's edition book. Everyone who gets the printed copy, that's all we're going to print up right now. But to answer your question before I get sidetracked, we are looking into Indiegogo or something like that, possibly. I've got to figure out what's best for us. I've already been contacted by 5 or 6 people today going, I missed it! I didn't know about it! And I try every avenue I could think of to let people who might know about the book know about it. But, and I've been on the other side of the bench. I did not know about John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake's Cross Kickstarter book until it was over. I didn't know about it. And they went to Indiegogo, and that's where I got my copy. I got my copy through Indiegogo. So I understand the need for that. And that's a very strong possibility that we're going to be doing that. I just have not looked into it and have not set it up, so I can't make promises. But I do think we will find a way to get this book in the hands of people who want it. That's the whole point of doing comics. You want it in the hands of people who want to read it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I said I support it. I know Adam supported it as well. Is that correct, Adam?
Yep, I signed up for the same 25-hour bug tier that you did, Brian.
Oh, yes.
As a sidebar, Mr. Kesel, over the past 17 years since Section Zero was on the shelves, 24-hour bug has stuck in my mind as one of the more creative character names I've ever seen in a comic. So, for that.
Thank you. The story actually there was we'd come up with the I'm a huge fan of the movie Them, the giant ant movie.
Oh,
I
yes.
love that movie. I love that movie to pieces. It made a huge impact on me when I first saw it as a child, and somewhere in there the idea of having a character with a giant bug head just really appealed to me, and a few bug legs sticking out of his back that just really appealed to me, and I wanted to call him Bug Boy, and I thought that was a real World Weekly News sort of name. I could see him on the cover of World Weekly News. Bug Boy, loose in the city. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Bug Boy, seen at local McDonald's. That sort of thing. And that really appealed to me. But in 2000, when we were doing this, just a year or two before, Image Comics had published a Bug Boy comic by an artist. I think his name is John Lewis. I could have that name wrong. Lewis is his last name. And I think we actually announced the name Bug Boy, and he contacted me and said, I kind of own that name. And I was going, what? There's no other name I could come up with for this character. He's a boy and he's a bug. He's a bug boy. And I still remember laying in bed one night, waking up going, 24-hour bug. He's a bug for 24 hours. And quite honestly, it was one of the best, happy accidents of my life. I am probably too proud of that name. Probably too proud.
I don't think you could be proud enough.
So, and I have to say, one of the things I was going to do on the Kickstarter, and then when I just knew we were not going to make our goal, so I saved this. I saved this for the second Kickstarter because I thought that's when we're really going to make our goal. I was going to do the 24-hour bug, where I bugged people for 24 hours to support Section Zero. And I guess I got to save it for our next Kickstarter. I guess I got to save it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I know you have to go have dinner shortly.
Yeah, I have to make dinner for the kids. Meatballs tonight.
Ooh, very nice.
Spaghetti meatballs.
But Adam, any last questions from you before we wrap it up?
I do have one more. I asked this not only out of my own curiosity, but sort of in memory of another member of our little podcast clique whom we lost to cancer a few years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, his name was Jamie. He was a big Marvel fan, also appreciated things that DC did, and he was a man who enjoyed a gorilla in his comics now and then. And so, in his name, Mr. Kesel, I'd like to ask you to share any reminiscences you might have about the 2008 Marvel event, Marvel Apes, of which
Oh, wow.
you're a writer.
Yeah, well, thanks. Marvel Apes, that is one of the most bizarre assignments I ever had thrown in my lap, I'll admit. I got, I actually have to say, Steve Wacker, he was the editor. We were at, unfortunately, Mike Warbingo's funeral, and Steve Wacker said to me, he goes, give me a call when you get back. And he goes, it's good news, believe me. And so I called him up, and that was when he offered me the Marvel Apes assignment. And at first I was like going, really? Marvel Apes? And I said, well, let me figure out a story. If I can actually figure out a story for that concept, yeah, we'll go, then sign me up. And I took a weekend, and I figured out an idea that seemed to work for me. And I wrote up a little pitch, and I sent it in to Steve, and Steve goes, I didn't think you'd like spend time on this. Otherwise, I would have told you that Joe Quesada wants the apes to be vampires too. And I said, what? And that really, apes was hard enough, but vampire apes. And I sat down to think about it, and I realized, now, I've never talked to Joe Quesada about this, so I really don't know if this is the case. But, the vampire apes was non-negotiable. That was part of the deal. And what I started to think was, Joe is thinking apes are not dangerous enough. Joe wants the readers to know these are really powerful, dangerous characters, so that's why he wants them to be vampires. He wants there to be a sense of threat that overcomes the inherent silliness of the idea. But I didn't think we needed that. I actually thought if you played them like real apes, they would be really brutal and vicious and deadly all by themselves. And so I kind of walked a very fine line where I did have some of them as vampires, but I think still some of the most dangerous apes and the most brutal apes are just apes, you know. And you know, for what it was, I think it was a miniseries that I can still stand beside. You know, it was a lot of fun. For some reason, I've always loved the Gibbon, and so it gave me a perfect excuse to use him. I have no idea why I love the Gibbon, but I always have. So it was an interesting little side road to go down. I have to say, and it did lead into, you know, the Marvel Apes versus Marvel Zombies, and I am a huge zombie fan, so that was a real fun job to do. So those are the memories I have of that.
Yeah, I do agree with you. Vampire Apes is kind of gilding the lily a little bit, but
see, you don't need it. You don't need it. You know.
But
so
I did enjoy that miniseries, and I know that Jamie did too. So from both of us, I thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. And I mean, I got to work with some great artists. I specifically remember when we did the Spider Monkey one shot, and I got introduced to Riley. Whose name is blanking on me now, of course, because I love it, but I love his work so much, and it was great. So,
now, in between your busy schedule, do you have any convention appearances coming up for the rest of this year?
I'm going to be at Rose City, and
Well,
what
that's
is
out
that?
Portland, right?
Portland. It's Portland. Like I can walk out my door and go to the convention, you know. So I'm going to be at Rose City, and I am going to be at a convention in Palm Springs in August, which is just the time you want to go to Palm Springs.
Yeah.
So, but I agreed to do that one, and I also have agreed in I think also September sometime to do the Saskatoon Expo where Tom Grummett and I will both be there.
Oh, no, because he's from the area, isn't he not?
What was that?
Isn't he from that part of the country in Canada?
Yeah, he's from Saskatoon. That's his hometown. That's where he is. So I'll go up and visit him on his turf. So that'll be good.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm glad we have managed to get you on the show. Looking forward to Section Zero coming out. Maybe there'll be a Christmas miracle. Who knows?
I would like that. I would like to have it out by Christmas. And, I mean, Tom and I are already talking about the next volume. There's going to be another Kickstarter for another Section Zero, probably very early 2018.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I would like to do one of these Kickstarters every year. Not always for Section Zero, possibly. But quite honestly, I see this as the legacy for my children. Because they own Section Zero, or will, you know what I mean? And all they can say is Dad worked on Superman, but they can own Section Zero.
Well, if you do those Kickstarters, I'm going to look out for some more pages to go up there to get some incentive for me.
Okay. Well, Tom is going to have to start reading his. I'm down to pages I don't want to part with at this point.
Okay.
You know, I was torn over getting rid of some of the ones I did. Let me tell you.
But it worked.
Well, you know, that's what it comes down to. You got to pick your favorite babies sometimes. You know, your favorite child, and Section Zero is our favorite. There's no doubt.
Now, I know the tagline was, there is no Section Zero, but yes, boys and girls, there will be a Section Zero.
Yes.
So, and of course, the other tagline for Section Zero, which I think I'll emphasize in the future, is protecting mankind from everything that doesn't exist.
Wonderful.
Because that's what they do.
Well, Mr. Kesel, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
And looking forward to seeing Section Zero as soon as you can get into our hands.
I am too. I really want it in my hands too.
All right, take care and enjoy your dinner then.
Thank you. You guys too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye. Oh, you still there, Adam?
You bet I am.
Wasn't that wonderful?
That was a good time.
Yes.
That was more than one hoot.
Yes, it was several hoots. You know, we don't do too many interviews. It's been quite a long time since we've done a first-time guest on the show. It's just a matter of, well, many factors, you know, our time, scheduling. I know Adam's not a huge fan of interviews, but I know you're a big fan of Mr. Kesel, so I'm happy you got this to work out.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I didn't come up in conversation, but I do have a convention sketch he did for me back in 2011 at Heroes Con, right here in front of me.
That's right.
It is, of course, of Bizarro.
Bizarro. Yes. And I did mention to him, I think it was off the air, but the page I have from Trinity, the weekly series back from, I guess, like the 2008 or 9, where he inked over Mike Norton on the back of the Riddler, where Mike were doing to one of the microphones of a press conference the CGS logo. So I have his inked page of that with the CGS logo on it. Very nice.
Very nice indeed.
Yes, and this whole, as we mentioned before, this whole thing sort of could have been a different interview, but I'm so happy that it actually has been funded, and we're going to get it in our hands just as soon as we possibly can.
I am actually eager as heck to read this book in its completed form now, because if those of you listening who haven't visited their Kickstarter campaign page, they did reproduce like a 5-page preview of Section Zero from back in the year 2000. I think it ran in the first issue of George Perez's Crimson Plague, and that really whetted my appetite, that little preview that Grummett and Kesel did back then for what this book was all about, because it revealed that there's kind of a hidden history to this group group of sort of cryptid hunters and defenders of mankind from, as the new tagline tells us, things that don't exist. And so we got to see different versions of the team from different points in history, like the original team, which is kind of like the Challengers of the Unknown or the original Suicide Squad, and then gradually adding like superhuman members over time. Mr. Karl mentioned he was kind of thinking along the lines of the Weekly World News for some of the characters. There's actually an Elvis look-alike in one of the past versions of the team. That's the kind of fun stuff that he and Mr. Grummett are injecting into this series. So I'm really looking forward to sinking my figurative teeth into what they're going to put together for this hardcover.
Yes, and I love Mr. Grummett's artwork for a long time, and was very happy to support the campaign and that it actually was funded.
Yep, it was a bit of a miracle, but then comics are a medium of miracles, so shouldn't be too surprised, but nonetheless grateful.
All right, so hope you enjoyed that interview. Maybe we'll do some more in the future. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, playing it by ear.
Yes. All right, well, once again, this episode was brought to you by SuperheroStuff.com, where you go to for all of your superhero stuff. All right. If you want to leave us a voicemail, the number is 267-702-6642. You can send us an email at comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. And, of course, visit the website at comicgeekspeak.com. You can join in the conversation at thecomicforums.vanillaforums.com and talk back about this episode, go into many other topics. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We're at Comic Geek Speak. We want to thank everyone who contributed to the show. We appreciate it. Could not do without you. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.
You got it on Wednesday, and you was psyched about it, going to the volume up. These guys will talk about it, everything that geeks love. From cakes to laser beams, opinions like the seasons, on everything you read in comics, movies, games, toys, artists, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek. Uniting the world's mightiest heroes. This is Comic Geek Speak.
Hi, I'm Karl Kesel,
Good evening. My name is Tom Grummett.
and here's what you need to know about Section Zero.
There is no Section Zero.
There's no Section Zero.
There is no Section Zero.
There's no Section Zero.
There is no Section Zero.
There is no Section Zero.
There is no Section Zero.
Section Zero is not a secret section of the United Nations Charter.
It does not perpetually fund a team of experts and explorers
to investigate the fantastic and unknown.
The idea that this team looks into things such as UFOs,
Monsters.
lost civilizations,
Time travel.
Ancient gods.
and still living dinosaurs.
is nothing but an urban myth.
After all, none of these things exist.
Okay, first, thank you everyone who contributed to that. Second, there are a few other things you need to know about Section Zero. Section Zero was created by Tom Grummett and myself. We're career cartoonists, which is a good thing because I live in Portland, Oregon. and Tom lives in Saskatoon, Canada. And there's really not a lot else we can do except make comics. If you've read comics in the last 30 years, chances are you've read something Tom and I have worked on, together or separately.
Probably best known for the Death of Superman storyline,
Superboy,
Robin,
Harley Quinn,
The Avengers,
Fantastic Four,
Superboy,
Suicide Squad,
the Teen Titans,
Daredevil,
Spider-Man,
Battlestar Galactica,
New Thunderbolts.
Almost forgot Superboy. Section Zero is high-octane, high-adventure. Sort of Jack Kirby does the X-Files. It has a great alien.
Amphibious fishman by the name of Sargasso.
A guy with a cursed tattoo that changes him into a bug for exactly 24 hours.
The 24-hour bug.
Probably my favorite character so far. But at its core, it's about the relationship between Doc Challenger, the team leader,
an Olympic athlete and a brilliant scientist,
and Sam Wildman, a bit of a loose cannon. It's about the cost of love and how far we'll go for love, but with added monsters. We created Section Zero back in 2000, but after only 3 issues,
lots of cool stuff was happening. Doc Challenger vanished in a ring of fire. The rest of the team was scrambling to figure out what happened to her, and then
personal matters meant that I could no longer continue working on it.
And we had to put the project on the shelf.
The original tagline for Section Zero was, "There is no Section Zero," which turned out to be kind of prophetic. But we always wanted to bring it back. And after many false starts and dead ends, it looks like Kickstarter is our best chance to finish the story we began 17 years ago. 17 years ago. Section Zero is a labor of love for us, but our passion can only take us so far. Now we need your help. Without your support, without you, this project will never happen. I know we're asking a lot, but only because this means a lot to us. In many ways, our original tagline is more true now than ever because there is no Section Zero without you.
Without you.
Thank you.